Welcome to Policy Exchange's latest agenda podcast on Russia's invasion of the Ukraine and its consequences. Today we have Amber Rudd with us, who was Home Secretary from 2016 to 2018. During that time, in Salisbury, the Skripral poisonings occurred. So Amber, 2018, you were Home Secretary. When did you learn about the Skripal poisonings?
Thank you, Michael, and great to be here with you and with Policy Exchange. It came out of the blue, really. We didn't have any suggestions that it was about to come, and I think that that's not just my department, but that was the Home Office, but also the intelligence services. And it became evident over the few days, really, along with the way it was revealed to the public. When these events take place, it's almost always the civil servants, the professionals, really, rather than the ministers, who know about it first, and then they make the judgment to say something along the lines of, "This is serious. You better call the Home Secretary." So I was contacted by my private office, who said that an event had taken place in Salisbury, and it was suspicious, and that I was going to be kept posted. And I wasn't given more than that to start with, but then over the next really couple of days, it was revealed as what it was, which was a poisoning on British soil.
Do you think the FSB wanted to be found out? Was it an operation which went wrong, or were they wanting to send a signal to other Russians in Britain that they should better watch out?
I think there was probably a sort of punishment evidence, as you sort of suggest, out of it as well. That, Putin, well known for his views about what he considers to be a betrayal. But on the other hand, there had been an agreement in place about other people's spies, basically, who had decided to live in the UK. So it was nevertheless a surprise that he had decided to do that. I can't really examine too much what his intent was. I mean, there must have been an element of wanting it to be seen as terror because of the method that he used, which was a form of terrorism, without doubt, in that it was intended to create terror amongst people and to have a sort of public covering around what he had done. But I think he also intended to kill them, Michael. And of course, famously, he failed in that.
Precisely, unlike in 2006 with Litvinenko.
Exactly.
Do you think the government's response at the time was robust enough? Is there more you could have done?
Well, I'm sure history will draw its own conclusions on that. I felt at the time we handled it effectively, and we had learnt from the Litvinenko event. I mean, as a relatively new Home Secretary, well, no, not that new, but still, I hadn't experienced the Litvinenko events, but there were people in the system who had experience of that, who felt that they had learnt from that, and that very much coloured our response. So let me explain that it was felt that with the Litvinenko event, we had attributed too soon, and the consequence of that was that Russia was successfully able to rubbish our attribution. And so this time, Theresa May was determined not to rush it, even though we were confident it was Russia, until we could evidence that it was indeed them and marshal support from other Western countries. So we had to hold back some of our colleagues so that we could be absolutely certain, clear in the evidence, articulate about what was happening and what the consequence was going to be. And so from that point of view, I think it did run to plan. And in fact, the support that we got from other Western countries was beyond our expectations, and also, as far as we understood, did surprise Putin that we got so much support from other Western countries.
So we've had these two poisonings, 2006, 2018. Should we be concerned about future such attacks from Russia? Is Russia
Always,
yeah.
Yes, always be concerned about them. And it felt like part of a sort of pattern, but we were very firm, we felt, in drawing it to the world's attention what they had done and the consequence to Russia. But it was a grotesque form of terror on British soil. It made us feel very exposed that they could do this. They were willing to do this. And of course, we then had, as I'm sure you're aware, the consequence a few months later of a local woman being killed by discovering when her boyfriend discovered the original bottle, which just pointed to the potential danger of what they had done. I mean, the fact is, it didn't kill the Skripals. It had a tragic consequence for a woman later and damaged a
Totally
few people.
unconnected person. Yeah.
Totally unconnected person. But we felt that this could have been so much worse. I mean, this bottle containing this terrifying poison had just been disposed of in a bin. I mean, not sort of properly disposed of. So it could have done much, much more damage in Salisbury. And we felt that it had been, apart from a very violent act of terror, it had also been sort of they had no feeling of the consequence of what might have happened should that bottle have smashed or got lost or something like that.
Litvinenko was poisoned in 2006. The Skripal poisonings occurred in 2018. Do you think it's possible that the FSB engaged in other actions on British soil, in other killings on British soil in that period, which were successful, so to speak, which have not come out?
I'm afraid I don't know. I don't know whether that's the case or not. Certainly, there was a lot of looking back at enemies of Putin or just, people who had Russian assets who might have fallen out with him, some of whom had died, whether he might have been involved with that. And the police, when police had, from the Home Office, they had been asked to look back, and I think there were about 12 that had potentially a question mark over them that were being looked at again.
And are those investigations have all been concluded? I mean, there isn't more to be done on.
I'm afraid I left the Home Office before I could find the answer to that question, Michael.
Sarah and Amber, do you think the West could have been better prepared for Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
Surely that this invasion happened almost exactly 4 years since the Skripal poisoning, and I was interested that we were being warned by our own intelligence services that it was coming. And during those months when Putin was getting his troops at the border, really, and sort of he was really demonstrating that he was going to be invading. It was interesting, wasn't it, that people were trying to persuade themselves that it wasn't really going to happen, when in fact the intelligence that we were being told and that was being shared amongst the West indicated clearly that he was going to invade. Could we have been better prepared? I don't know what else we could have done. I mean, I'll listen to ideas and thoughts about it, but the fact is, this was a man who was going to bludgeon his way into a neighbouring country. I'm not sure what else we could have done except put down red lines in different areas. I fervently believe that the only thing that Putin believes in is strength. I worry that sanctions are going to be insufficient. You look at Iran, sanctions have not had much of an effect on behaviour there, really. And the only other thing we could have done is put a sort of NATO arm around Ukraine, but I wouldn't have proposed that. I don't think that was going to happen. I think that there was not much else we could have done, except threaten sanctions. But again, I don't think sanctions were really going to have any impact on Putin. And it remains to be seen whether it's going to have an impact as we get further into this.
And the reason you think they won't have an impact is because oligarchs have become less powerful, or because his...
No. I just think that it's not something that somebody like Putin cares enough about for it to dictate his foreign policy. His approach to things is not the same as ours, as we well know. He doesn't share our values. He doesn't share our approach. He thinks he's negotiating now by just storming in. I don't think that sanctions is part of his consideration.
So he's willing to live with the consequences, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
again, I draw attention back to Iran. Iran has had sanctions on. Have they had much effect? Not really.
Earlier you mentioned over the Skripal poisoning, there was a great deal of cooperation with other governments and intelligence services in Europe. Would that be true today? I mean, has Brexit, do you think, changed the story there?
I think that the European countries really came together quite strongly as a result of the Skripal poisoning. Our message to them was, you need to take action in support of the UK, because this could be you next time. There has to be something he learns from it. And they took that very much to heart. And of course, different European countries, and indeed America, expelled a large number, I think it was over 50 Russian diplomats from the US. And so I think, as I say, I think that surprised him, and I think it acted as a uniting impact. Not every European country was quite as supportive. I think Italy was a bit reluctant. I think that if you look at that response then and you compare it to now, Italy is not outside that tent now. I think that it has made Europe even stronger because they recognise that we have a common border, and that we are having to hold together, trying to put together sanctions, and we are stronger by doing that as one continent, supported as well by America, and America is very close to us as well. I think as far as Brexit is concerned, it really depends where you stand in a way. Personally, I would have preferred the UK to have been in the EU, making the argument, persuading the EU, leading from the front. Instead, we're not in those conversations, but it is good that the UK is working with the EU now. There's no more of that sort of slightly petty standoff that we've had since we've left the EU. And I really welcome that engagement where the UK is sometimes attending with EU members.
And in 2018, we'd obviously already voted for Brexit. So in that way, the relationship probably hasn't changed that much.
No.
For a while, Russia was spoken of as an ally in the war on terror, particularly of its own experience in Chechnya and sort of radical Islam there. Was that a mistake? I mean, was that always a sort of forlorn hope?
I think that was wishful thinking. I don't think that anybody really felt that they were on the same team as us. Nobody was proposing letting them join the Five Eyes. There was no real sharing of intel about terror issues. I think it was part of Western countries, trying to bring Russia closer in order to kind of civilize them and have them as part of the exchange of information that might work together. But I think that was, as I say, more wishful thinking.
I've got two more questions. One is Britain's policy on wealthy Russians, admitting them to Britain in the past, and then encouraging investment and obviously being reliant on donations, etc. Do you think was that a mistake? Should Britain have been tougher on wealthy Russians living in London part of the time and
I think
buying
that
property here?
one of the reasons why wealthy Russians want to come to the UK is because we have such a strong rule of law for the individuals. And it can be difficult to undo that on a selective basis when you want to. So it's not as easy as people think it is to try and address where people got their money from and what we can do about it. The example I give you is that we specifically introduced unexplained wealth orders in order to challenge people who had money potentially from nefarious means, and to be able to take them through the courts to take it back off them, or to take action in some way. Turns out the law that we brought in wasn't tough enough, wasn't able to deliver it. And so just, I think in the past 2 weeks, the government has gone back on that in order to do something about it. So it'd be wrong to say we didn't do anything about it, but it's fair enough to say, looking back on it with hindsight, we should have done more.
And what more, if you were Home Secretary at the moment, what more do you think domestically or in a wider sense can the government do at the minute to help Ukraine?
Well, I think that the strongest suit we have is to help the civilians of Ukraine as they're leaving. And I think that I'm surprised that we haven't been doing more, really. And just to be clear that, whenever we wanted to do anything in the Home Office on immigration, whatever type, it is the Prime Minister who leads on that. From my particular point, of course, the Prime Minister was a former Home Secretary, so she certainly knew her way around it. But that is the sort of the chain of command. So I'm surprised we haven't been doing more of that. I think that's, that's the main role of the Home Office, is to be able to help with immigration. The Home Office does immigration, policing, and terrorism. And it seems to me that it's on immigration that it could be most helpful.
So the message is be more generous. We should be more generous to Ukrainian refugees.
Definitely.
Yeah.
definitely. But this is mainly because it's not just a different scheme or a separate country. This is a moment of urgency of a war visited country, and the UK should be, at the very least, stepping up and doing the same as our European colleagues.
Thank you. Much enjoyed that, Amber. And thanks for listening to the latest Policy Exchange podcast on Russia and the invasion of Ukraine. There's more to come next week, but thanks for listening and do subscribe.